I'm Carla Jenkins, 20, a college student scraping by with a part-time job at a coffee shop in Richmond, Virginia. My family never really noticed me. I was the shadow in our townhouse, always there, but invisible. My sister, the golden child, absorbed all the attention. While I scavenged for scraps of their affection, years of being overlooked carved a quiet resentment into me. I kept it buried, clinging to the hope that one day they'd see my worth. That hope shattered during our Thanksgiving prep last Wednesday night. The kitchen was chaos, and I was juggling my laptop, trying to finish work for a looming deadline. In a sudden flash of spite, my sister knocked it to the floor. The screen cracked. My work gone. I froze, heart hammering, as she leaned in, voice sharp as a knife. "No one wants you here." My parents stood nearby. Didn't flinch. They nodded. Their silence screamed louder than words. Something inside me broke. I didn't yell or cry. I grabbed my bag, walked out, and drove to my friend's place. My chest felt heavy, but my resolve was iron. The next morning, my phone lit up with 12 missed calls from my family, texts stacking up. Now they needed me, but for what? I stared at the screen, a strange calm settling over me. What could make them beg after all those years of pushing me away? If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit like and subscribe to see how I took back control. This wasn't the first time I'd felt like an outsider. Growing up in our Richmond townhouse, I was always the afterthought, the one who didn't quite belong. My earliest memories sting with neglect. My 10th birthday, Mom and Dad forgot to plan anything, too busy praising Wendy for her school project. I sat alone with a store-bought cupcake, forcing a smile while they laughed over dinner. Wendy, my sister, 5 years older, had a way of taking everything, my clothes, my space, even my parents' attention, without a second thought. Once she stole my favorite jacket, tossed it in her closet, and smirked when I asked for it back. "You don't need it," she said, cutting through me like a blade. I learned to stop asking. I poured myself into work, taking shifts at a local coffee shop to save for college. Every dollar felt like a step towards something better, something mine. Wendy freelanced as a graphic designer, coasting on Mom and Dad's support. They slipped her cash for projects, while my paychecks were just cute. Joseph, my dad, a bank clerk, barely looked up from his newspaper when I talked about my goals. And my mom, a homemaker, doted on Wendy, her mirror image, confident, charming, always the star. I was the quiet one, the one who didn't matter. Aunt Shirley, Mom's sister, would visit and join in the praise, leaving me to clear the dishes. The years piled up, each slight another weight on my chest. I'd lie awake, wondering why I wasn't enough. Wendy's taunts grew sharper, her entitlement bolder. She'd borrow my things, break them, and laugh. She spilled paint on my sketchbook, destroying months of drawings, and Mom brushed it off. She didn't mean it, they said, but I saw the truth in their eyes. Wendy was their pride. I was their burden. I tried to be invisible to avoid the sting of indifference, but it never worked. Every ignored achievement, every forgotten promise, built a quiet rage inside me. I kept it locked away, hoping for a moment they'd see me, but hope was fragile. By last Wednesday, it crumbled. That Thanksgiving prep was the breaking point. I was balancing my laptop, rushing to meet a class deadline, when Wendy's carelessness, or maybe spite, sent it crashing. The screen went black. My work was gone. Her words, "No one wants you here," weren't new, but that night they cut deeper. Dad's nod, Mom's silence. They weren't ignoring me. They were choosing her again. The weight of years pressed down, every overlooked moment flashing before me. I didn't cry or argue. I just left, bag over my shoulder, the door clicking shut behind me. At my friend Brandon's place, I lay on his couch, staring at the ceiling. The hurt settled into something colder, harder. I wasn't surprised when my phone started buzzing the next morning. They hadn't called in months, but now they needed me. For what? I didn't know. Years of being pushed aside had taught me one thing. I was done waiting for their approval. That night at Thanksgiving wasn't just a fight. It was the end of pretending I belonged. I had spent years trying to earn their love, and all I got was indifference. Now, with my phone lighting up, the power had shifted. The next morning at Brandon's place, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I rubbed my eyes as dim light filtered through his curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. Sleep had been fitful. Fragments of last night's confrontation swirled in my mind like smoke. The device vibrated again on the coffee table, insistent, pulling me back. I reached for it, pulse quickening. 12 missed calls, most from and a few from Joseph and one from Wendy. My stomach tightened after years of silence. This sudden barrage felt unnatural, almost desperate. I unlocked the phone, scrolling through the call log, and had called first at dawn, then Joseph an hour later, Wendy slipping in between. No voicemails, just the raw evidence of their urgency. Then the texts started flooding in, one after another, each more frantic than the last. Anne's message appeared first. "We need you home." Wendy's in trouble. My breath caught. Trouble? What kind? The word hung there, vague yet ominous, stirring a mix of curiosity and wariness inside me. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, debating whether to reply or let them stew. Another text pinged from and, "Please, Carla. It's serious."
Call back.
Serious. The irony twisted in my gut. How many times had my own struggles been dismissed as trivial? I set the phone down, leaning back against the couch, the rough fabric pressing into my fingers. Brandon stirred in the next room, but I didn't wake him. This was mine to handle, a rare moment where I wasn't chasing anyone's approval. The buzzing continued. Joseph's name flashed now. I ignored it, watching the screen dim for the first time. A glimmer of control. A quiet power in my silence. As the minutes ticked by, more messages poured in. Wendy's read, "Kurt, you need to help. Help. After everything." That was rich. I picked up the phone again, fingers trembling slightly, and followed. Wendy messed up with some online sales. People are suing her for fake products. We can't handle this alone. The revelation hit like a cold wave. Wendy's freelance gigs had always seemed shady, promising custom designs and taking payments up front. Now it made sense, a scam. She'd been selling counterfeit goods through sketchy websites, luring buyers with low prices. The lawsuits were piling up, demanding restitution she couldn't afford. My mind raced, piecing together the fallout in Virginia. Such fraud could trigger civil claims, maybe even criminal charges if the scale was large enough. I exhaled slowly, the weight of their pleas settling over me. They weren't reaching out for reconciliation. They needed a bailout. My savings from coffee shop shifts, hard-earned, tucked away for my future, suddenly loomed in my thoughts. But why me?
Why now?
Years of resentment bubbled up, mixing with this new twist. I typed a response to an otent. The words felt liberating, a small act of defiance. I imagined Wendy's shock when she realized I might not come running. Joseph texted next, "This isn't the time for grudges."
Come home.
Grudges. As if my pain had been petty. I set the phone to silent, letting them wait. Morning light grew stronger, illuminating Brandon's apartment, the bookshelves, a half-empty mug from last night. In that quiet, away from chaos, I felt a shift. For so long, I'd been invisible. Now they were scrambling. The control tasted unfamiliar, almost sweet. I pushed it down, focusing on facts. Wendy's scam had caught up with her. Fake ads for knockoff jewelry, electronics, anything she peddled. Furious buyers, legal complaints, escalating demands for restitution. The family's finances, already stretched, couldn't cover it. Hours crept on. Ignoring them felt right, a boundary I had never set before. The phone vibrated again, but I didn't check. Let them sweat. In that moment, I realized how deeply their favoritism had shaped me. Always second, always expendable. But now, with their crisis unfolding, I held the reins. The thought lingered, a quiet resolve forming. Whatever came next, I wouldn't rush in. By noon, another call came, Aunt Shirley. The ringtone pierced the quiet, jolting me from my thoughts. I hesitated, finger hovering over the screen. Shirley's voice, usually warm and chatty, carried a strained edge. She launched in immediately. Carla, you have to come back. Family sticks together, through tough times. The phrase echoed in my ears, a hollow mantra I'd heard countless times growing up. But now it rang false, stirring a deep frustration I could no longer ignore. I gripped the phone tighter, mind flashing to the patterns of favoritism that had defined our household. I had always been the mediator, the invisible one, while Mom lavished endless praise on Wendy and Dad remained distant, never intervening. Why now? I asked, tone steady but laced with years of unspoken hurt. I didn't wait for her response, diving instead into memories that fueled my resolve. The way Mom ignored my efforts, how Dad dismissed my achievements compared to Wendy's whims. Shirley stammered, her usual confidence faltering. It's not like that, dear. We all care. But her words stumbled, her voice trailing off into awkward pauses. I picture her fidgeting, caught off guard by my directness. The conversation dragged on, circling back to appeals of unity, each attempt only deepening my sense of isolation. She painted Wendy's predicament as a crisis, hoping guilt would pull me in. Inside, a quiet defiance built. For once, I wasn't yielding. Shirley's voice softened, almost pleading, but her discomfort was palpable, a crack in the family facade. I ended the call abruptly. The silence afterward was heavy with unspoken truths. Her intervention, meant to bridge the gap, only widened it, highlighting how little they understood my pain. Moments later, texts from Joseph and flooded in, urgency escalating. Anne's flashed first. Please, we're falling apart without you. The words twisted in my chest. A mix of irony and sorrow. Falling apart. Had they ever considered how I'd felt, pieced together from scraps of their attention? Joseph's message followed. Come home now. His bluntness, so typical, sparked a flicker of anger. They weren't asking. They were demanding, as if my absence were a mere inconvenience. The messages kept coming, each one dripping with desperate hints of financial strain, vague references to Wendy's mess. And added, we can't do this alone. Alone. The hypocrisy burned. I'd been alone in that house for years, invisible amid their circle. I paced the room, carpet muffling my steps, letting the weight of their pleas press down. The control I'd glimpsed earlier solidified into determination. Ignoring them wasn't enough. I needed to confront this head-on, to see their faces when I stood my ground. The idea took root, a plan forming amid the chaos. I knocked on Brandon's door, explaining briefly. He nodded, handing me his car keys without question. Be careful, he said, concern stark against my family's self-serving outreach. I slipped the keys into my pocket, a sense of purpose steadying me as I gathered my things. The texts persisted. Anne's tone shifted toward hysteria. Carla, please respond. Joseph chimed in again. This affects all of us. All of us. The phrase mocked me. When had my struggles ever affected them? The drive loomed ahead. Short in miles but monumental in feeling. I stepped outside, the door clicking shut behind me, resolve unshaken. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what they'd taken. My voice, my boundaries. The engine hummed to life, carrying me toward the confrontation that had been brewing for far too long. An hour later, I pulled up to our Richmond townhouse. The familiar driveway stretched before me, but the weight of returning pressed heavy on my chest. I stepped out, air thick with late afternoon heat, heart pounding with a mix of dread and resolve. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with panic. Mom sat at the kitchen table, hands clasped tightly, eyes rimmed with stress. Dad paced near the counter, jaw set, while Wendy slouched in a chair, her usual confidence replaced by a sullen scowl. The sight of their disarray stirred something in me, not pity, but cold clarity. They were unraveling without me. I stood in the doorway, my presence shifting the room's tension. Mom looked up, a flicker of hope in her expression quickly dimmed by my silence. Dad stopped pacing, gaze sharp, as if my arrival were an imposition. Wendy barely glanced my way, fingers fidgeting with her phone. The silence stretched heavy with unspoken accusations. Finally, Mom spoke, voice trembling. Carla, we need you to help Wendy. The words landed like a punch, their desperation stark against years of indifference. I crossed my arms, steadying myself. What happened? I asked. Wendy shifted, eyes darting away. I got caught up in some online deals. They're suing me for $10,000. The admission hung raw and unfiltered. Her scam, selling fake designer bags and electronics, had backfired, leaving angry buyers and mounting lawsuits. The sum echoed in my mind, a fortune my coffee shop wages could barely touch. Indignation surged. They expected me to fix this, dip into my savings, while never sparing a thought for my struggles. My mind raced back. The broken laptop, my ignored efforts, their nods to Wendy's cruel words. I took a breath, voice steady but firm. I'll help, I said, pausing as their faces lit up. But only if you apologize publicly in the family group chat. List every way you've hurt me. The room froze. Dad's eyes narrowed, hands clenching. Mom's mouth opened, then closed, shock evident. Wendy scoffed sharply, deflecting. This is my fault now. Her attempt ignited a spark of anger in me. I stepped forward, words deliberate, laying bare years of neglect, forgotten birthdays, stolen belongings, unwavering favoritism. Each memory spilled out, a litany of wounds carried silently. Mom's face crumpled, hands twisting together. She didn't interrupt. Dad shifted, discomfort palpable, as if my truth were an inconvenience. Wendy's scowl deepened, fingers tapping furiously, but she said nothing more. Their silence spoke volumes, a grudging acknowledgement of my pain. Mom nodded slowly, whispering, "We'll do it." Dad grunted, reluctance clear but no argument. Wendy rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, defiance barely masking fear. I held their gaze, resolve unshaken. This wasn't about money or their crisis. It was about forcing them to see me, admit their wrongs in a way they couldn't take back. The tension thickened, their agreement hanging like a fragile thread. As I turned to leave, Wendy's voice cut through. "You're making this worse." Her accusations stung, but I didn't flinch. She lashed out, desperate to shift blame, but I saw through it. Their panic, their need, only deepened my certainty. I walked out. The door closed behind me. My steps were steady. The drive back to Brandon's felt lighter. The weight of their chaos no longer mine to carry. I'd laid down my terms. For the first time, they couldn't ignore me. The confrontation had shifted something fundamental, a line drawn I wouldn't cross again. The next morning, my phone pinged with a new group chat message. I sat up on Brandon's couch, the faint hum of his apartment grounding me as I opened the app. The family chat, usually dormant, glowed with a single, stiff paragraph. Mom's name was attached, but the words felt forced, pieced together like a script they hadn't rehearsed. They apologized for past oversights, for not always being fair, for any hurt caused. Hollow phrases, carefully crafted to avoid true accountability. No mention of forgotten birthdays, stolen belongings, or the years I'd spent as their afterthought. It was a performance, not remorse, and it stung more than their silence ever had. I leaned back, fingers tracing the edge of the phone, a bitter taste settling in my throat. The apology was a transaction, a means to an end, to secure my savings for Wendy's mess. I pictured them huddled together, debating each word, hoping it would be enough to pull me back. But the clarity I'd found in their absence held firm.
I wasn't their lifeline.
I typed a response, hands steady. "You don't want me. You want my money. I'm done." The words landed like a quiet declaration of my truth. I waited, expecting a flood of replies, but only silence followed, their hesitation louder than any protest. The weight of their betrayal pressed against me, but it wasn't crushing anymore. I opened my contacts, scrolling to Mom's number and Jenkins. The name stared back, a reminder of her distance. I hit block, swift and final. Dad's number, Joseph, came next, his dismissive grunts, his blind favoritism, gone with a tap. Wendy's lingered a moment longer, her smug taunts echoing in my mind. But I blocked her too, severing the tie that had bound me to her chaos. Aunt Shirley was last, her well-meaning pleas. Each block felt like shedding a layer, the heaviness lifting with every choice. I set the phone down, screen dark, and let out a long breath. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened, as if the chains of their expectations had fallen away. The quiet of Brandon's apartment wrapped around me, stark against the chaos I'd left behind. I thought of the $10,000 they'd begged for, money I'd scraped together over countless coffee shop shifts. It wasn't theirs to claim, not after dismissing my worth for so long. I'd poured everything into earning their approval. But now I saw it for what it was, a hollow pursuit that had cost me too much. Sitting there, I imagined a life untethered from their demands. No more chasing fleeting attention. No more swallowing my hurt to keep the peace. I could focus on my studies, my job, my small circle of friends who saw me for me. Brandon's kindness, his quiet offer of a couch, stood in sharp relief against my family's self-serving outreach. I pictured mornings free of texts, evenings spent building something new. The thought sparked a fragile hope, a vision of a future where I defined my own worth. That morning, as sunlight filtered through the window, I felt a shift. The resentment I'd carried for years was fading, replaced by a lightness I hadn't known was possible. I wasn't angry anymore, nor seeking their validation. I was enough. And that realization was a quiet triumph. Blocking their numbers wasn't just an act of refusal. It was a boundary, a reclaiming of my space. They'd made their choices. Now I was making mine. The group chat sat silent, their apology unanswered. And I knew I'd never look back. My life was my own now, and I was ready to live it. A week later, Brandon shared news about my family, sitting at his small kitchen table, the smell of fresh coffee grounding me. He relayed what he'd heard from a mutual acquaintance. Wendy had faced a judge for her online scam. The fallout from her fake designer goods had landed her a suspended sentence. Restitution was ordered, a crushing weight on the family's already strained finances. Dad had lost his bank clerk job. The stress of Wendy's legal mess had eroded his focus until his employer let him go. Mom had resorted to selling her cherished jewelry. I pictured Mom sorting through her jewelry, hands trembling with regret, and for the first time, felt no pull to rescue them. Not for me, but for their lost stability. Dad's pride, once unyielding, had crumbled under the weight of unemployment. Wendy, stripped of her charm and entitlement, now faced a future tethered to court orders. Aunt Shirley, who'd pleaded for family unity, had faded into the background, her calls unanswered by all. Their world was fracturing, and I felt no urge to piece it back together. Instead, I was building something new. I'd moved in with Brandon temporarily. His spare room had become a haven of quiet support. My coffee shop job had ended, but I'd found a new gig at a bookstore downtown, the kind of place where I could lose myself in pages and conversations. The work wasn't glamorous, but each paycheck felt like a brick in the foundation of my own life. Evenings were no longer filled with tension or obligation. I spent them with new friends, classmates and coworkers who valued my ideas, my laughter, my presence. For the first time in years, I felt seen, appreciated, and in control of the life I was shaping.